Hey everybody, we are just going live here and we've got our attendees signing in. So we're going to give everybody a couple minutes to get logged into Zoom and then we're going to get going.
That's excellent.
And I'm going to do a couple social media pics. So if everybody wants to look into the screen and say hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
And a little wave. And then just so everybody
like
knows,
mirror reverse.
We have a little function that you can do. I forgot to let everybody know that at the top of your screen, It says speaker view, gallery view, and you can change how your screen appears.
Yeah.
And so all of our attendees, just so you know, we won't see or hear you, but you can use the chat function on your far right if you want to send us a message, like where in Canada you are logging in from. Hello from Toronto. This is wonderful. Okay, so we're seeing a few hellos. So yeah, tell us where you're from in the chat. And what we'll do is we'll do a quick run through of how this webinar is going to go and our agenda before we get started here.
We've got Red Deer, Calgary, cool, Vancouver, Yellowknife,
cool.
And I'm just curious, is
Saskatchewan, Vancouver,
is anyone homeschooling their kids while this is going on and working at the same time?
Answer via chat.
No, but I do have my work computer right here that I'm keeping on.
Yeah, you've got two computers on.
Yep. I gotta stay logged into my work one.
I've been reading some people's social media posts talking about how some of the moms are working really late at night because they're parenting and schooling during the day, and then late at night they're trying to get their work done.
Yep.
And I said, maybe you need to take a break from the schooling. You just can't do it all. But yeah, I feel for parents who are at home with kids.
It looks like somebody here has 5 kids. That's
wow, Rue. Yeah, you have 5 kids. How's Grand Prairie?
Wow. Yeah, okay, 5 kids make an adventure.
We'll
5 is too many.
More minutes as people join in. Yeah, and I come from a family of 5 kids. I could imagine my poor mom. I know what it was like growing up, but having us all at home was a lot of work.
Yeah. My kids have 3 kids, and they have 3 little ones, and it's it's a bit much after a while. Day in and day out.
So as everybody's signing in, maybe I'll just go through some of the Zoom features. So for those of you who are watching and listening to this at home, in your top right-hand screen, it says speaker view. So you can click on that, speaker view, gallery view. And then your bottom center screen, there's the Q&A. So if you have questions for our guests today, you can put them into the Q&A. And we're going to keep all the questions, I think, for the very end. Unless there's something that's maybe not clear during the presentation, we can address it. Yep. And if you would like to use the chat's more just saying hi or comments or stuff like that. But questions you have specifically for our guest today, please put them into the Q&A. And when we're running this, what we'll do is we're going to turn off the video for the people who are not speaking, and that way you can focus on our guests that we have today. And we're at 12:33. We've still got a couple people signing in. I think what we're going to do is we're going to get started. So let's hand this back over to our moderators for today from DOC Alberta, Jerry and Heather.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Heather Hatch. I'm one of your 2 moderators with Jerry Potter. I'm a Haida filmmaker and a board member of DOC Alberta, the Alberta chapter of the Documentary Organization of Canada. DOC is the collective voice for documentary filmmakers across Canada, advocating with funders and facilitating communication between documentary filmmakers. We're also the founder of the DOC Hots Film Festival. So welcome to Meet the National Film Board West Studio, and I'd like to extend a thanks to all of you out there for joining us, and a big thank you to our special guests for joining us today. So we've got David Christensen, who's the executive producer of the National Film Board Northwest Studio, Dominique Keller, and Elle-Máijá Tailfeathers. They're both currently co-producing respective projects with the Northwest Studio. And now Jerry's going to do some talking.
Hi, I'm Jerry Potter. I'm a filmmaker. I'm co-chair of DOC Alberta. And I am co-moderator with Heather today. Thank you especially to the National Film Board Northwest Studio for facilitating this and helping make it happen. You guys have been great. I'm going to outline the plan for today really briefly, but is there anything technical that we need to go over before that, Ava?
I think we're good to go because I did that quick intro at the beginning as people were signing in.
Okay. You may find that
and I'll remind people in the chat function where they can put the questions.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the plan for today is first, David is going to tell us a little bit about the NFB Northwest Studio and the projects. Then Dominique and Elle-Máijá will each tell us a little bit about their current project and show clips from their footage. Heather and I will then ask a few questions of the guests. Then we will open up the screen so that all panelists can be seen, and we'll have a Q&A, a moderated Q&A. Webinar attendees are invited to ask their questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, just slightly to the right of the middle. And Heather and I, with the help of Ava, will relay some of those questions. If there's a whole lot of them, we'll have to sort of select a few of the big questions, I guess, or the main questions that are coming up, and we'll pass them on to the panelists as appropriate, to either all of them or individual panelists. We'll address as many of your questions as possible within time limits. Okay, let's get started. David, would you tell us a little bit about the Northwest Studio and how and why the studio got involved with these two projects?
Sure, Jerry. I mean, thank you very much to DOC Alberta and DOC National for doing this, and to Heather and Jerry and Ava for moderating this and looking after the technical aspects of it. So, I mean, I'm sure many of you know that the Northwest Studio is one of 6 English language studios that the Film Board has across the country. Each studio is set up ostensibly on a regional basis. So our region that we look after is Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Northwest Territories, and Nunavut. We've got kind of 2 main offices out of which we work. We're of course currently not working out of them right now. We've got an office in Edmonton, and so there's a producer out of Edmonton named Cody Savard. I also work out of Edmonton, although I live in Calgary. I've got another office in Winnipeg where I've got producer Alicia Smith and producer John Montes, and they're based. And amongst those 3 producers and myself, we have about 32 projects on the go right now. It's been actually super busy in the last, I'd say, 2 months, pretty much since COVID. Everybody went into lockdown and COVID was declared a pandemic in the studio, to both keep projects going and to get new projects going. So right now we've got about 32. We, as many of you know, we focus on social issue documentary filmmaking, although we do some animation work and we do some interactive work as well. That represents both of those represent a smaller percentage. Most of the work that we do in the studio is social issue documentary filmmaking, both feature, medium length, and short. So, of course, there's all sorts of other things I guess I could point to as well in terms of what the studio is doing. I guess, Jerry, your question around how we got involved with Elle-Máijá's project and with Dominique's project. I mean, both of those are 2 of the 32 projects that we've got on the go right now. Both of those are feature documentaries. We got involved with them, I would say, pretty much the way we tend to get involved in most projects, which is that the filmmakers got in touch with us. And in this instance, both Elle-Máijá and Dominique got in touch directly with me. And at first it was an email, sort of very quickly after that, it was a phone conversation. In the case of Dominique, because she and I both live in the same city, we got together and had a cup of coffee. And in both instances, we spent a lot of time just kind of talking about the project, talking about what both filmmakers wanted to do. And it was pretty apparent right from the get-go that there was something unique about both projects. Elle-Máijá, who is from Kainai, talked about how she wanted to look at harm reduction strategies in her community. Kainai had been hit incredibly hard by the fentanyl crisis, and she was interested in exploring what the community was doing to combat fentanyl and other addictions through harm reduction. And it was this, I guess it was this point of view that she was bringing to the documentary as someone who's from that community and also as an experienced filmmaker, someone who, you know, is very invested in the story itself for all sorts of different reasons. And I think what sort of appealed to us too was that there was an expansiveness to the project. There was something that we really hadn't seen before in terms of you know, looking at harm reduction. The Film Board has done a number of films on harm reduction. I would say almost all of them have taken place in urban centers and have been specifically through a non-Indigenous lens. This one was really interesting because you know, it was going to take place in you know, community south of Calgary, the largest reserve in Canada, and it was going to be done by somebody who is from that community. So you know, it's Elle-Máijá can fill you in on all the ins and outs of it. It's we've had this film, we've talked about this film and been working on this film for over 3 years to one degree or another. With Dominique's, Dominique, you know, has kind of an interesting background in terms of making films about seniors. She made a film called Teaching My Grandmother to Drive. And I know that Dominique had come to us. I think she'd spoken to us about that project. Anyway, you know, we knew Dominique from other projects that she had done, some of which she had come to talk to us about. But she mentioned that she really wanted to do a project that looked at senior relationships in care homes. And Dominique already had a little bit of money from the Alberta Foundation for the Arts to do some research. And what she was proposing to do was, you know, find a care home that she could go and film in. And I have to say that, you know, when she and I first started talking about this, I think both of us were a little bit, I don't think we were convinced that anybody would let us in, to tell you the truth. But Dominique is a very persuasive person, and she went and found a care facility here in Calgary that was willing to let her come in and you know, she, for the first little while, all she did was show up every day and just kind of get to know the place. Anyway, there's kind of a really interesting development and production history behind it. All of this is to say that you know, a film that looks at senior relationships is not something that I think is at the forefront of a lot of people's minds, and yet at the same time, I think it's something that we will all face to one degree or another in terms of both ourselves and also caring for our aging parents. And so there was just this, you know, and Dominique has a really interesting perspective about, you know, what this story is and where she wanted to take it. And it was part of those conversations and then putting the project into development that got us really excited about the project. And so with both of those, they're currently now in production. In fact, both of them are in post-production right now. We've got a little bit of shooting still to do on Elle-Máijá's film. And, you know, we hope to have both of those pictures locked sometime in the fall.
Thanks, David.
So that's
Thank you very
the
much.
cottage history of it.
Thank you. Start my video. Okay. Heather, I think you have to start your video. I think we're going to ask, Heather is going to ask David, is going to ask Dominique. Dominique?
I'm here.
Okay.
It's not. All right.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. It's really nice to see you. And I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about your film, Love, the Last Chapter.
Great. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening in. I guess my story of filming Love, the Last Chapter starts around this time last year. I moved into a seniors lodge. That's right. I packed my toothbrush, my toothpaste, my pajamas, and my camera, and I moved into what we used to call an old folks home. And I went all in. By that, I mean, I ate my meals there. I slept every night there. I played bingo. I even broke a sweat in a seniors sit aerobics class. And I did that because, as David said, I was super curious about seniors and love and what does love look like at the end of our lives. And I was doing this research. And by moving into the lodge, I made friends that I'm going to have for like the rest of my life. And well, maybe not my life, but maybe the rest of their lives. And as well, I built trust. And I guess the big thing is like what I experienced there living in that lodge. It really changed my life. And we're just going to roll a clip here of that piece of that film.
This way. Music. Another fire. Do a 360 together. Do a 360 together. Okay. Ready? Once more now. Oh, I can't. I can hardly breathe. I can't. Okay. Would you be my partner? You okay? I can't. Okay. Sit. No. Sit down on me. Sit on my lap. Of my life.
What a moving clip.
Thanks. So that's Jim and Diane. They were at the time last year when I was living at the lodge a new couple, and I lived there for a month, and then I continued to film throughout the year. Yeah, you might have really found that clip beautiful. You might also have been somewhat concerned watching that clip. Maybe you were concerned about Jim in his wheelchair. Perhaps you were even concerned about Diane with Jim and whether she was safe or not. I know right now with COVID-19, the safety of seniors in Canada is a pretty big concern for all of us. Certainly, I'm very concerned about all the seniors in my life. The reason I showed you that clip was to give you a little bit of insight into Jim and Diane's relationship. I know them very well now, and I can say that that love that they have is both beautiful and really complicated, kind of like a lot of our own love. And that clip, you know, it also illustrates something interesting. Up until recently in the lodge, people that had wheelchairs or walkers, they weren't allowed to dance. And then all of a sudden, the lodge changed that rule, and they allowed them on the dance floor. Now, that seems like just like a really little thing, but actually, it's a huge thing. And I'm going to tell you why that's a big thing in the words of Anna. She's another resident at the lodge that I became friends with, and we would often chat over coffee. And one day she said to me this: aging is a series of losses. You lose your job. You lose your looks. You lose many of your friends and your family. You lose your health. When all of that is taken away from you, what's left? What I've found is left is actually the most important thing. It is the only thing that matters. That thing is, it's love. Love is the most important thing. Love is the only thing. So I just think, like, as a moment as filmmakers, I totally get it. I'm there with you. We are stressing all the time about so many things, how we're going to pay our bills, especially right now with a lot of government uncertainty and uncertainty around the pandemic. We're also all, constantly consumed with concerns about getting our projects off the ground. I'm sure that's why you checked in today, looking to find a way to perhaps co-produce with the NFB. Worried about getting that film done, worried about right now, I know I was talking to Jerry beforehand, how do we get our films out? All of these concerns are weighing on our minds. This big gift that I had at the lodge was like, wow, looking at these people and living with these people, it like really dawned on me. Years from now, none of that's gonna matter to me. Not one bit. You know what's gonna matter? What I observed really mattered to the residents of the lodge. Love. Love. Who loves me? Who cares if I got up in the morning? Who's reaching out to me? Love is the most important thing. And I think we've all felt a bit of that with the pandemic too. It's like, wow, we get reduced down to living in our homes and our telephone, talking to people becomes so important. So I really think that's at the heart of this documentary.
It was really powerful.
Thanks. I'm still going. That's my dramatic pause, Heather.
Okay, sorry.
So if you take nothing back from this talk or from this thing, like that for me is a huge takeaway. And I know you're like, oh yeah, okay, Dominique, well, how do I get funded? How do I make, that's all nice and dandy. But I really actually think that that's also in the heart of our projects, because this project grew organically for me. It started as like this kind of uncomfortable questioning in my heart about what is my old age going to look like? I'm a woman that doesn't have children. Will I be alone? And this kind of fear and curiosity around lives in seniors lodges. And I think when we have those kind of really super uncomfortable feelings, or certainly for me, that's a sign that there's a story in there, there's something to follow. And this project really, like David said, it happened very organically, and it just slowly fueled itself as it went along. And I think my learning from this is that some projects, I pitch tons of projects all the time, but there's projects that take on their own lives. And this is certainly one of them. And I guess the older I get, the more I'm starting to see, like, I don't want to push my boat upstream anymore. I want to, pitch my projects, get my ideas out there, and then follow the ones that have their own life. And that's certainly what happened with this film. And
Dominique, what we're going to do is we're going to move on to Elle-Máijá, but we're going to come back to you, David, and Elle-Máijá all on camera at the end. So we're just going to keep on time. So if you have any kind of last comments before we move on to Elle-Máijá.
That's it. That's all I have to say. I'm done. Great. Thanks.
Thank you, Dominique. Ready to see this. Now we'd like to go over to Elle-Máijá, who I'm also very excited to meet.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah. I would love to try to say the Blackfoot word here, but I'd prefer if you did the name of your film.
Yeah, so the film is called Kiimaapiipitsin, which is kind of like a core Blackfoot value, which it basically translates to take care of each other, to give kindness, to give empathy, and it's a value or a teaching that I think has gotten our people through a lot of really ugly stuff, and so yeah, that's what the film is called, Kiimaapiipitsin.
Okay, and the rest of the film is called Harm and Healing on the Kainai. And I'd love if you'd tell us a little bit about the project as well.
As David mentioned, I'm from Kainai, or the Blood Reserve in southern Alberta. It's the largest reserve in Canada in terms of land mass, and our community was one of the first to be hit by the fentanyl crisis in all of Canada. So it's been our normal for over 6 years now. And my mother is a physician on the reserve, and at the time when the opioid crisis hit, she was basically the only doctor on the reserve. Now we have a lot more working from our community, and so I would hear about all of the terrible things that she was witnessing as a frontline worker within the community, and I sort of felt helpless because I work in and what can I really do? And as a community member, it was devastating just to see our community experience such overwhelming grief because everybody has lost someone to this crisis. And so I felt that it was sort of my responsibility as a filmmaker to document what was happening in the community, and moreover, to sort of counter the standard narratives that were appearing in the press and the media about my community, which is often kind of rooted in this trauma porn or poverty porn perspective. And like Vice did a documentary, for instance, where they literally just like swooped in, told the same old kind of story, like did the sort of like drive-by shots of the houses that are that don't look so great from the outside, and they toured around with a cop and then they left. And so I wanted to be able to document the beauty and strength of my community and all of the people who are working tirelessly on the front lines for change. And so the film is essentially, I've been working on it for 4 years now, but the film is essentially a 3-year journey with my community, witnessing frontline workers and community leaders, and also people living with addiction, fighting for change or advocating for change, and kind of working through harm reduction, because harm reduction, I don't know if everybody knows what that is. Harm reduction is, it means a lot of things, but in the world of addiction, it's essentially the understanding that we meet people with addictions where they're at. We don't expect people to suddenly become clean or sober, because what we've learned through the fentanyl crisis is that when you approach it with an abstinence-based model, when you expect people to quit cold turkey, that has led to a lot of death, because people quit, their tolerance changes, then they go and use alone because they're ashamed of the fact that they're using, and then they often overdose and die. And so in this journey, we sort of follow my community's efforts in understanding harm reduction and the ways that it does and maybe doesn't work within my community. And so, yeah, I'm just so like overwhelmingly proud of my people and all of the hard work that has gone into finding solutions over the last like 6 years, literally. So yeah, that's what the film is. And the clip that people are about to see is of Lori, who's one of our kind of main, I don't really like to say characters, one of the main participants, who was generous in sharing her journey, and her daughter Mariah, who became one of our main participants. And it's kind of just a moment or a window into their sort of daily life. Lori's on Suboxone, and she is the foster mother to some of her nieces, her niece and nephews, and she has a lot on her plate, and she's just kind of like one example of many people who are working through life on Suboxone and trying to have some sort of like sense of normalcy. And yeah, I think she's just a really beautiful and compelling person. So yeah, anyway.
Baby's just staring. I think it was May. I got the 2 older ones, Trisha and Giselle. Trisha's in school right now. And I got the baby in June. So yeah, like next month will be a year since I've had all 3 of them. Their dad is my brother. My sister-in-law got really sick. She passed away in January. You know, with me being clean for a couple months already and, you know, having all this space in my house, I decided to take them because they had nowhere to go and I had a lot of room and, you know, I just felt so empty and it felt so much better once they came and stayed with us. But that TV, when I first got off taking drugs, some family members, you know, would come and check upon me and try and keep me busy, you know, just because I was really feeling down and stuff, like, because I felt so guilty because of what I put my daughter and my nephew through. So they'd come because I would, you know, tell them how I feel so depressed. I feel so bad. I could just kind of makes me want to start using again. I don't know why I was thinking that. So they would come and check upon me, and one of them actually brought me to bingo, those community bingos. And I got lucky and I won that TV. When I really snapped out of it, like, made me realize, you know, I need to make this a home in order for them to feel at home, especially my daughter.
And I told her that I'm scared to lose her, that she was the only one that's there for me. Well, yeah, practically she is. And yeah, and ever since she got off, it's like our relationship just connected again. And we just started talking more, and like we're happy again.
Wow, thank you. Can I be seen? Start video. No. Oh, so that you start your video. Okay,
Oh,
there I am.
you are.
There I am. Okay, thank you so much, Elle-Máijá and Dominique, both. Those were just beautiful and very moving pieces. Thank you. I have a couple of questions, David, for you. The first is, what kind of projects is the NFB Northwest Studio looking for? And secondly, how might a filmmaker approach the NFB Northwest Studio with a project?
Yeah, good question. I mean, fair questions, Jerry. You know, on one level, we try not to be prescriptive, so I can't tell you, you know, subject matter that we're looking for. I think, you know, anybody who's kind of interested in approaching us with an idea, it would be great, you know, if they were had a look at some of the productions that the NFB has done over the last couple of years. You know, we've got a production blog that highlights a lot of the work that we're doing. We've got a page that highlights the work that's currently in production and in development in each of the studios. My studio and the other studios are looking for documentary that speaks to some sort of social issue unfolding in Canada today. And that's very broad, of course, and you can do a lot underneath that. You know, we're looking for something that is a really strong story, that has an interesting point of view from the filmmaker, that has some interesting access. I think, you know, we're also thinking about, you know, have we done a project like this before? You know, is the story tacked something that's familiar or unfamiliar? We're, you know, thinking about, you know, whether it will fit into the slate projects that's in the studio. So I can give you an example is that, you know, right now we've got about 11 projects from filmmakers in Manitoba and 10 projects from filmmakers in Alberta. You know, we might get another couple of projects that come in from filmmakers in both of those provinces, and we'll certainly consider them seriously. But, you know, I don't have a lot of projects from filmmakers in NWT or in Nunavut or in Saskatchewan. And to be fair to, you know, the representation as a public producer, you know, making sure that we are working in all of those different places in our region one of the decisions and one of the things that we have to look at is, can we fit another project from, say, Manitoba or Alberta into the slate right now? If a good project, we'll find a way to make it work. It just might be that, we might have to say, look, it's not something we can do right now. It'll be something that, once, in 6 months' time, we'll have a little bit more room in that part of our slate. But, by and large, it all comes down to the story. I think people are tired of me talking about how, the producers and I want something that makes us sit up in our chair, that shows us something that, that is kind of a unique perspective on a social issue unfolding in Canada today. In terms of, how people approach the film board, it's super easy. You can send us an email, you can give us a phone call, and, all we're looking for initially is just a couple of paragraphs to tell us about what this story is that you're interested in, and then we will follow up with you. Normally, pre-COVID, we were always trying to meet in person for all sorts of obvious reasons. Now, we'll get on Zoom or Teams, or we'll give you a call and talk about it a little bit further. And if it's something that we think, we really want to consider, we'll get you to, we as the producers in the studio, about once every 4 to 6 weeks, we sit down and look at new project ideas that have come in. But those new project ideas are simply based on, give me a one-pager, something like that. I don't need a budget. I don't need anything outside of telling us a really good story right now, and then we can begin to have those conversations about what the larger production looks like.
Wow. Thank you, David. Over to you, Heather.
Okay, thank you. So I guess we'll start with Elle-Máijá for a few questions. I was wondering, are there any, I know you answered this question a little bit. You said you wanted to change that narrative of, sorry, what did you say?
I guess, counter the narrative that the mainstream media or the press was sort of presenting about our community.
So that would answer part of my question is, what kind of changes do you want to see happen by sharing this story? So I think that would be one, but is there anything else you wanted to do with this story?
Yeah, Lorna Thomas had a quick question. I know she knows the answer to the question. Lorna Thomas is one of the founders of Moms Stop the Harm, and she asked that I clarify what Suboxone is. So Suboxone is a form of opioid agonist therapy, or opioid replacement therapy. So instead of asking people who are addicted to opioids to quit cold turkey, they're able to be prescribed something like Suboxone or methadone and work through tapering off in that way. So anyway, that was a completely new thing for our community, and I think it was really important to document that. So in terms of other changes, I think as an Indigenous filmmaker and as someone who's working with my own people, there was this sort of like constant interrogation, that self-interrogation that I needed to do in terms of my position as a filmmaker and as a community member, and why I was telling the story, who I'm telling it for, and even this constant question of why do I even have the right to tell this story, and all of the responsibilities that go along with presenting my community to the rest of the world. And so there were some interesting things that we did along the way. So in development, a group of 10 women from my community came to Vancouver's downtown east side, and we toured a number of harm reduction agencies, and we filmed them doing that. And while we were filming, my mom said, we're learning so much. This is so great. Is there any way that people back home can get this footage? Because she knows that it takes years for me to make a film. And so we I talked to David about it, and immediately received David's support and Michelle Van Buskem's support to kind of model what the NFB has done in the past with an initiative called Challenge for Change. And so what we did is we created these sort of really like rough educational short films from all of that material that we had filmed early on in development that was then in turn used within the community. So we were able to sort of share the information that some of these women gained here in the downtown east side. We were able to use it to generate community conversations. It was, yeah, just a really incredible way to sort of work reflexively as a filmmaker and as a community member, and to know that like this isn't just about making a documentary that I want to show at film festivals. You know, it's a documentary that I hope will benefit not only my community but other Indigenous communities, because people's lives are literally on the line. Like we're losing so many people still to the opioid crisis, and it was also an opportunity to sort of hold bureaucracy to account, because our people are working with so few resources. So it's an opportunity to sort of show how underfunded, you know, our ambulance, our police, our treatment centers are, to show that you know, there's this federal versus provincial jurisdiction in terms of on reserve services that our people are not haven't had access to because of the federal jurisdiction on reserve. So yeah, it's a lot of things, and I think you know, the process wasn't perfect, but I certainly learned a lot along the way, and I think that we kind of gained some interesting working models through this process. And another thing that I think is important to mention as well is that you know, as an Indigenous filmmaker, I often work with non-Indigenous crew members. You know, there's not enough Indigenous people working in sort of the key technical positions. And so I think it's really important that we're working to build capacity, to build training opportunities and work opportunities for Indigenous people working in sort of our key crew departments. And so that was part of our process, was also making sure that we were building capacity in that sense with our crews, but then also because I was working with non-Indigenous crew members coming into my community and working directly with community members, we instituted like cultural competency training early on, so that we could ensure that we were starting in the right place, in a place where the non-Indigenous crew members understood that, you know, Canada has a long way to go, and there's a certain responsibility as non-Indigenous people going into an Indigenous community to sort of start from a place of respect and understanding, and just be willing to listen.
Just
Yeah.
a note to everyone when they're responding. We've got 15 minutes left, including the Q&A. So if you can, maybe do a little bit of a condensed version in your response, kind of a Reader's Digest version.
Yeah, this is my next question for you. You answered already. So the question was, could you tell us how you dealt with the issues of ownership and copyright of your community's story? But I think you kind of answered that but if you have anything to add really quick, I'd love to hear it.
It's kind of an ongoing conversation, actually. So the film is a co-production, and you know, the history of film has I'm trying to do the Coles Notes version of this response, but basically you know, it's hundreds of people from my community have contributed to this film in some capacity. This is my community story, and the concept of an institution, especially a government institution, owning the rights to that material and our community stories is really problematic. And so the NFB has this Indigenous Action Plan, which I think is really important. There's still a lot of work to do. And yeah, we have this sort of ongoing conversation about how do we ensure that the ownership and copyright of those stories and people's personal stories from my community is not held simply within this government institution's archives, that it also belongs to my community.
Interesting. All right, so I guess we're running late a little bit, so thank you so much for answering those questions. And then Dominique, I guess you kind of answered some of my question a little bit too. You said, my question was, what sparked your interest in elder intimacy? And I think part of it was based on, you know, going to your heart. But I guess I had another question from when you were talking. You said that it changed your life. Can you tell us how this story did that?
You guys hear me? Yeah, I think it. I did hit that in my talk too. That it's really about love and that central part of love. So
Okay, and then when I was reading the NFB's thing about your project, it said that it could be taboo. Can you tell me why people might think that elder intimacy is a taboo subject?
I mean, I think we can all understand that, why it's seen as a taboo subject. Definitely, sexuality and romance in mainstream media is strictly reserved for generally, heterosexual young couples that make over 50,000 a year. Seems to be who we see on the television quite often, and I think we also have a taboo about people outside of that group engaging in any sort of intimate relations.
I thought if you're okay, I'll take a couple of the questions that we've got from our audience here. Elle-Máijá and Dominique, do either of you produce dramatic or do you mainly work in the nonfiction documentary genre?
I can go, sure. I have done some dramatic projects in the past, comedies as well, which hats off to anyone who makes comedy. That is the hardest genre in the world and so important and so underappreciated. But now my focus is documentary.
Yes.
Short, girls.
I work in both. I have a feature-length film called The Body Remembers When the World Broke Open that I co-wrote and co-directed with Kathleen Hepburn that you can watch on Google Play, iTunes, Apple TV, Shaw and Telus on demand, and soon on CBC Gem.
One of the questions from the audience has been, has COVID had any impact on your production, or have you already completed the shooting? So what impact, if any?
I'm done shooting primarily now. I had some pickup shots that I wanted to get, but that's off the mat. But I think we have enough to finish the film.
We still have some stuff that we need to tie up production wise, and obviously can't do so right now. And it's been an ongoing conversation with David about how do we do that safely, and when is it safe to do so, to go back. So we, like David said, have like a rough cut of the film, but obviously there's these gaps missing in terms of stuff that we have yet to film. So kind of like everybody else in the film world, things are kind of on pause.
Elle-Máijá, can you talk about what it was like working with family members?
Yeah, sure. Hard. My mother, initially I hoped she would be kind of like one of our main participants, but she really just didn't want to be. She's a very humble person, and she was uncomfortable with that sort of position, and so she did actually end up being kind of a key participant, but more on the periphery. But I think it was it was really challenging, but also a really beautiful experience to be able to spend so much time with my mother and with my family. A lot of the people in the film I'm also related to, and I think it added this like extra degree of responsibility on my part to know that these people are my community and my people and my family, and I have a responsibility to tell their stories with respect and integrity.
Dominique, there's a question for you about, have you been in touch with your friends at Silvera during the pandemic and how it's affected them and maybe possibly your edit?
Yes, I do keep touch with all of the people, the main couples that participated in my film. Right now, they are, most of my subjects are in a situation with quarantine where they can't leave their rooms at the moment, except for small necessary trips, and certainly that's really impacting them. I feel like there's a whole nother documentary going on, but again, like it's a very trying time for all of the subjects in my film at the moment.
Jump in there, Jerry. I unmuted you.
How has COVID affected the community you've been working with, Elle-Máijá?
I'm so proud of my community. I think in a weird way, the opioid crisis prepared my community for COVID. So they've been so incredibly organized and prepared for all of this. So COVID did hit the community, but because of all of the strategy and work that happened early on in this whole COVID thing, our people were well equipped and prepared for the situation without the support of government. Although that additional funding did help. So yeah, things are okay. Things are under control, and once again, Kainai has done a wonderful job of taking care of our own people.
Were either of these projects co-pros, Elle-Máijá or Dominique? That was one of the audience questions. Were they co-productions or are they full NFB productions?
Yes, co-production.
Yes.
For us.
And who were the co-productions with? Do you each have a production company? Can you just elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I have my production company, Keller Media, and this project received funding from the Ted Rogers Hot Docs Fund, POV Fund, and as well is going to be broadcast on Super Channel. So that's our additional funding structure, and then the NFB is the minority co-producer. Is that right, David? Good. Got it.
Mine is a little bit more complicated. I received this really tiny but important grant from Hot Docs 4 years ago. And the film was initially meant to just be a short film. So I received the Cross Currents Fund. And then I realized there's no way that this could just be a short film. So that's when I approached the NFB. And so it is a co-production, but the NFB is a majority producer in the co-production.
There are a few questions on our list here for the NFB too. One was, do you ever do dramatic narratives anymore?
No, we do not.
Okay.
I mean, that's the easy answer to that question is we don't do. Now, within the documentary genre, there's all sorts of ways of telling documentary, and one of the ways that we can possibly do it is using dramatic conceits in some form or another, but we do not do dramatic narratives where you come with a script and we produce that. No.
And another question for the NFB was, do you have any topics or content that is off limits?
None that I can think of. Okay. No. No, none that I can think of.
Some of the questions also
don't self-censor or edit yourself when you first come and talk to us.
That's reassuring. How has
question maybe for Dominique about her project?
Okay.
Dominique, the question is: did you always know you were? This is from Elise. Did you always know you were going to immerse yourself in your documentary like you did, or was there a point when you thought it would be the best approach?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, this basically what happened is I started visiting the lodge, and I felt like I was not getting content. I was not making connections. I was very much seen as like just another small bit player. And I said to David, you know what? I have a crazy idea, and this is kind of a thing with this project. I said, well, what if I move into the lodge? And David was like, yeah, that is a crazy idea. But I think this is kind of a theme. It's like, let's just go all in and see what happens. And you know what? I would have never got the access that I have if I hadn't done that. It totally changed the perception of me by the lodge residents. So I would encourage anybody to move into a seniors lodge to make their film, or wherever it is that you need to move in.
There's a question for David. How is the NFB adjusting during COVID?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we, certainly distribution and festival plans have been affected with, a number of films that are ready to go. On a production and development level, there were no. Well, I guess to be very direct about this, there were no projects that were canceled. In fact, we've had 13 projects that have gone into development and or production since the lockdown, since the beginning of COVID. And there have been some projects that were kind of set to go that we had to pivot away from. But that was, we pivoted away from them in terms of the production and how we were going to do the production obviously in concert with the filmmaker. And so, there's one example of a film that we were all set to sort of bring a bunch of interview subjects together. We found a different way to do that remotely. So we've, really tried to brainstorm with the filmmakers, those who, want to make their film right now, about how we could go about doing it. We have been working on a number of short films with filmmakers who, they can just shoot those films on their own, and then been editing them and doing the post remotely. We've been doing a fair bit of investigator development work right now with filmmakers, because this is a good time for filmmakers to be thinking about ideas that they would like to do when things relax a little bit. And so we've been approached quite a bit by filmmakers with ideas, and we've tried to put as many of those into play as well. Again, there's kind of no strings attached to that investigate money, in the sense that, we want to give out a little bit of money for filmmakers time to think about their project, to, talk to some people, do a little bit of research. They can come back to us with a research report. If that research report sort of like sings for us and sings for them, we can talk about, ways to sort of put it into production. If it doesn't really work, that's fine too. The filmmaker can take that and go elsewhere if they want. And, we'll work out a way that is as easy as possible for the filmmaker in terms of paying back that development money. So.
There's another question. One of them is, what is the difference between working with the NFB as a co-producer and working with simply doing an NFB production?
Yeah, I mean, the difference being is that when you're working on a co-production, you're, obviously working with a filmmaker, but you're also working in concert with the filmmaker, either as the co-producer, or you're working in concert with a co-producer with whom the filmmaker is working with. We generally come in for around 40%. We want to be a minority co-producer. Elle-Máijá's project is a little bit different for a whole bunch of somewhat complex reasons. We don't generally become the majority co-producer, just because it really limits what the co-producer can go and get in terms of tax credits and broadcast licenses and things like that. When you work with us as 100% NFB producer, you're working with us as a director. So we're the producers, and the filmmaker is the director. So we will produce it, and whatever that means, and you as the filmmaker have the creative space just to concentrate on making the most creative project possible. You do not have to worry about the financing.
So moving forward, what are the best ways to follow updates on both of your projects? Like, when are they coming out? What's happening with them? When can people see them? How can they follow along?
Sure, I'll go first. That seems to be our order, so we can keep it straight. This Love the Last Chapter will be complete late this summer, early fall, and it's going to be broadcast on Super Channel in spring 2021. We'll also be going to the festival market, if festivals, however they are running. And it also has this whole other life, which I see Anthony's there, which is with Good Pitch, which is all about documentaries for change, which I could go all into it, but we also want to do a huge outreach to seniors lodges and to educational institutes, and we're looking at how we can effectively do that through filmmaking for social change.
We're hoping to have this finished in the fall. Again, it all really depends on how this COVID business goes. And then realistically, we'll be premiering some festival sometime in the next year. And hopefully, one of our focuses is also to build a strategy for community outreach and engagement, and make sure that it's available to Indigenous people first and foremost. Accessibility is a major sort of motivator with this project.
So is everybody okay if we go kind of 5 minutes over, and we'll have a couple other questions? One asking to happen in Canada, and options for maybe different languages like French, for example.
Sorry, can you repeat the question, Ava? You kind of cut out for me.
Does the project need to happen in Canada? And options for French-speaking filmmakers?
With the film board, currently no. The project doesn't need to happen in Canada as long as it has a Canadian director. It is a project that we'll consider. We've done projects outside of Canada. In fact, the film board has a very long and storied history of making work outside of Canada through a Canadian lens, through a Canadian perspective, and it's something that we continue to do today. Those projects obviously, to one degree or another, tend to be very expensive. So generally those projects come to us on a co-production level. But yeah, absolutely, we can consider those projects. In terms of French language, yes, I mean there's the English side of the film board, which is the 6 studios across the country. But then we also have our colleagues in the French program. There's a couple of studios that are specifically set up to look after French filmmaking in Quebec. But then we also have a French studio that's based out of Toronto to look after the Francophonie outside of Quebec. And Denis, who's the executive producer of that, has the biggest region at the NFB in Canada. So he looks after French filmmaking outside of Quebec itself. We don't do any French language filmmaking in my studio.
There was a question here for, I guess both of you could address it. How is it to make a doc, and maybe this is for Elle-Máijá, that could hit close to home? Recommendations for going forward, just to avoid some of the stress that may come from telling a story that involves your personal family.
I think you need to spend as much time with your participants and community members and family members as possible before even going to camera. I spent a lot of time researching, and that meant speaking to probably over 50 people from within the community, just having coffee with them or visiting them at their office, having phone conversations, and really just gaining a stronger understanding of the various perspectives within the community, and then just having a lot of open and honest conversations with people beforehand, and also making sure that participants are aware that that they have the right to sort of decide how we move forward when we're filming. That if they're not comfortable answering a question, they don't have to answer it. If they want to stop filming, we'll stop filming. Just sort of basic ethical protocols in terms of respect. And then in terms of the stress of working with family or community, I guess I didn't really think of it as being stressful. I thought of it as just a responsibility and an obligation to my community, and that it's not about me as a filmmaker, that I'm simply sort of a vessel for my community to share their sort of collective voice and experiences through film. So it was a sort of constant reminder that it's not about me. I'm just here to serve my community and my people.
There's a little question about co-production. I'm not sure what it actually means, but I'll relay it quickly. How much participation do the co-production partners have? And I'm not sure whether that's financial or just activity.
I mean, on a financial level, you need to have at least 51%.
Okay. So,
and generally, like I said, is the film board, for the most part, actually tries to come in at about 40%. So, the co-producer is responsible for raising the other 60% of the financing. In terms of I guess the other type of participation would be creative participation, and it's all in. In fact, I fully expect it. And if you're not creatively participating, that's a problem for me, as a matter of fact. So because I think that's why the filmmaker wants their co-producer in the project, because they're bringing a specific tact, a look, a creative tact to the project. And I think that's also what we bring to the project as well. As we're not just financial co-producers, but we're creative co-producers at the same time. I mean, it's all about the relationship, isn't it? And about working together and trying to make the best film possible. and doing it in the best manner possible. And I think, you know, if all of our co-productions, I mean, I've been at the film board for 13 years, and I can't think of a co-production that we have done that has gone south in any sort of way. It's, you know, they've had their challenges, but they've all been rewarding.
Thank you, David. I think we've hit our time limit pretty well, so I'm going to wrap up. I want to thank everybody for participating today, all you attendees. Thank you, and thank you for your questions. Sorry if we didn't get to answer all of them. Maybe, I think there might be some technical way that we can stay behind and answer a few of them. Thanks to NFB Northwest Studio. Thanks to all of the participants, Heather, Ava, David, Dominique, Elle-Máijá. Thank you all for participating. It's been really illuminating for me and fun. Zoom stuff is still new to a lot of us, so we didn't get everything right, but it was a pretty good time. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
And thanks for your passionate storytelling, ladies.
Thank you. Thank you.
Be well, everybody. Stay safe. We'll see you out there in the world again one day.
Signing off. Ava, can we answer those questions still somehow?
I don't know how to get up here.
I think we've got most of them, Jerry. I think the ones in light of the new norm, how this impact film industry and film formats. I mean, I don't know if I can address it, but that's from Nisreen. In light of the new norm, how would this impact film industry and film formats?
There's a question about internship program for students on the NFB. David, do you have an internship program?
Yeah, we haven't really done, some studios manage to do internships. In my studio, no, we really haven't sort of found a way to make that work. There's so much about the film board systems that are just really difficult for somebody to come in for a short period of time to do any work on. And because we're so spread out, and because so often we're actually not in the office, we're out on productions or out in other towns meeting filmmakers and whatnot, it's difficult to have somebody shadow you.
And
I think, you know, that's part of the reason why. What's that?
I said, especially now, it's hard to have someone there, like until we know what's going to happen down the road, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, those studios that are sort of more, you know, like the Toronto studio, or to a certain degree the Vancouver studio, that, you know, a significant number of filmmakers are kind of based in those two respective cities, and so the producers themselves are more or less based in those respective cities. It's kind of easier to make work, but you know, because we've got 3 provinces and 2 territories and 3 producers and 1 executive producer who are hardly ever in the office, it's difficult to do.
You know, we forgot to thank everybody on the DOC Alberta board, hard-serving volunteer DOC Alberta board and co-chair Lorna Thomas. And David, thank you so much for creating the space and time and all the prep and planning. This was a great workshop, and 2 wonderful filmmakers sharing their stories of their work.
So moving. Those pieces. Wow. Yeah, and wonderful work. Just amazing.
Let's do it again.
Let's do it again. This was good. These are nice.
And also, anybody who's watching this after the recorded version, join Documentary Organization of Canada. We need you to join. We need your voice.
Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody.
All right. Talk to you later.
Thanks, David.
Bye.
Thanks, Ava. Bye-bye.